On November 1st, 2005, the United Nations adopted Resolution 60-7, designating January 27th, the anniversary of the liberation of the most notorious death camp, Auschwitz-Birkenau, as an annual international day of commemoration in memory of the victims of the Holocaust. The resolution urged member states to develop educational programs to instill the memory of the tragedy in future generations in order to prevent genocide from occurring again. The Holocaust was a turning point in history because it prompted the world to publicly declare, never again. The significance of Resolution 60-7 is that it calls on the world to remember a past crime in order to prevent such crimes from ever happening in the future. Under the adopted resolution, the General Assembly, reaffirming
the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which proclaims that everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth therein, without distinction of any kind, such as race, religion, or other status.
Recalling
the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, which was adopted in order to avoid repetition of genocides such as those committed by the Nazi regime.
Recalling also
the preamble of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which states that disregard and contempt for human rights have resulted in barbarous acts which have outraged the conscience of mankind.
Honoring
the courage and dedication shown by the soldiers who liberated the concentration camps.
Reaffirming
that the Holocaust, which resulted in the murder of 1/3 of the Jewish people, along with countless members of other minorities, will forever be a warning to all people of the dangers of hatred, bigotry, racism, and prejudice.
Resolves
that the United Nations will designate January 27th as an annual International Day of Commemoration in memory of the victims of the Holocaust.
Rejects
any denial of the Holocaust as an historical event, either in full or part.
Commends
those states which have actively engaged in preserving those sites that served as Nazi death camps, concentration camps, forced labor camps and prisons during the Holocaust. Condemns without reserve all manifestations of religious intolerance, incitement, harassment or violence against persons or communities based on ethnic origin or religious belief, wherever they occur.
Honored guests, excellencies, community leaders, good evening. My name is Jeremy Amius, and I'm the chairman of the Hong Kong Holocaust and Tolerance Centre. As we have just heard, the United Nations designated January the 27th as annual Holocaust Memorial Day to mark the day that Auschwitz was liberated by the Red Army. This year, we are marking it on January the 23rd because of the Chinese New Year holiday this Friday. On your chairs, we have placed a page with the UN resolution and with the Nuremberg laws in English and Chinese. In most countries, the annual UN Holocaust Memorial Day is a government event, and we acknowledge and thank the support of the government of the HKSAR and their official representative, Florence Burke. We also salute the Honourable Tung Chi-Hwa and Donald Tsang, both former chief executives of the HKSAR, and thank them wholeheartedly for their presence this evening. We understand that Mr. Chung may need to leave slightly early, and we forgive him for that. Thank you very much. We also are delighted to welcome a large diplomatic contingent this year. The liberation of Auschwitz enable the dissemination of important human tales of suffering and survival. This is what our educational mandate at HKHTC is all about. As we individually contemplate and reflect this evening, let us remember that although over 1 million people were slaughtered in Auschwitz, over 100,000 souls either survived or endured Auschwitz and lived to recount their experiences. And this is why Auschwitz has become such an inspiration. We do not hear many stories of Belzec, for example, where 600,000 Jews were murdered and 2 people came out alive. Or Sobibor, where under 50 people escaped or so. Let us reflect on this terrible period of human history during our ceremony. Let us cherish and absorb the words and presence of our most honoured and respected guest, Micha Gelber, here with his wife Ria, who brings us his personal story of Bergen-Belsen this evening. His story is especially unusual because he is one of very few children who survived a concentration camp. His family was enabled to survive initially as potential human exchange for Germans in Palestine. He is literally one of the few people in the world who can share with us the perspective of such horror in the eyes of a child aged 8 and 9. In almost all cases, any child of that age was selected for immediate death. Let us learn from him and reflect during this ceremony.
Your Excellency, distinguished officials and guests, ladies and gentlemen. During the Second World War, 6 million Jews were systematically rounded up and exterminated. The Nazis also murdered Sinti and Roma, political prisoners, homosexuals, persons with disabilities, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Soviet prisoners of war. The Holocaust was a colossal crime. No one can deny the evidence that it happened. By remembering the victims and honoring the courage of the survivors and those who assisted and liberated them, we annually renew our resolve to prevent such atrocities and reject the hateful mentalities that allows them. People worldwide, including millions feeling war, persecution, and deprivation, continue to suffer discrimination and attacks. We have a duty to remember the past and also to help those who need us now. The memory of the Holocaust is a powerful reminder of what can happen when we start seeing our common humanity. On this day of the Holocaust remembrance, everyone is encouraged to denounce political and religious ideologies that set people against people. Let us all speak out against anti-Semitism and attacks against religious, ethnic, or other groups. Let us create a world where dignity is respected, diversity is celebrated, and peace is permanent. Thank you. 各位尊貴嘅嘉賓、各位朋友，喺第2次世界大戰嘅期間，600萬嘅猶太人慘被有預謀嘅被圍捕同埋殺戮，而被納粹殺害嘅仲有新提人、羅姆人、政治犯、同性戀者、殘疾人士、耶和華見證人嘅教徒，以及蘇聯嘅戰俘。猶太大屠殺係滔天嘅大罪，冇人能夠否認曾經發生過呢一個嘅罪行。我哋每年都悼念呢啲嘅受難者，並且向勇敢嘅幸存者，以及嗰啲曾經幫助同解放幸存者嘅人致敬。 藉此重申我哋堅決防止呢一種嘅暴行，並拒絕產生任何嘅仇恨。世界各地嘅人民，包括數以百萬計逃離戰難者、受迫害同被剝削嘅人，仍然係遭受住各種各樣被歧視同攻擊。我哋記住歷史嘅教訓，亦都有責任去幫助嗰啲今日係有需要嘅人。紀念猶太大屠殺嘅事係可以警醒世人。如果我哋忘記大家共同擁有嘅人性，可以想像到係會發生乜嘢嘅事情。喺今日嘅猶太大屠殺紀念日，我謹敦促每一位都一同譴責嗰啲令人對立嘅政治及宗教嘅意識形態，讓我哋每一個人都能夠仗義執言，反對反猶主義，以及對宗教、種族、其他群體嘅攻擊。讓我哋一齊締造一個尊重尊嚴、多元化同永遠和平嘅世界。多謝。
is now my honour and privilege to introduce Ms. Florence Hoy, Under Secretary at the Bureau of Home Affairs, representing the government of the HKHTC.
Honored guests, excellencies, friends, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's my honor joining all of you on this important occasion in remembrance of the Holocaust. May I first of all, on behalf of the Hong Kong SAR government, express my heartfelt gratitude to the Hong Kong Holocaust and Tolerance Center for organizing this annual remembrance ceremony and the invitation to have the privilege to be with all of you, the dignitaries in attendance this evening. While the Holocaust was uniquely unique, as Holocaust scholar Yehuda Bauer put it, there are important universal lessons to be learned and acted upon, including, among all others, the responsibility of memory, the responsibility to protect, the responsibility to prevent, and the responsibility to educate. On education in particular, as the declaration of the Stockholm International Forum on the Holocaust concluded, we share a commitment to encourage the study of the Holocaust in all its dimensions, a commitment to plant the seeds of a better future amidst the soil of a bitter past, a commitment to remember the victims who perished, respect the survivors still with us, and reaffirm humanity's common aspiration for mutual understanding and justice. This commitment is shared by all of us, as individuals or institutions, globally or locally. Since its inception in 2011, the Hong Kong Holocaust and Tolerance Center has been dedicated to the promotion of education and awareness of the Holocaust across Asia. In Hong Kong alone, representatives from the center have visited more than 50 local and international schools to extend their educational work throughout the territory. This includes screenings of Holocaust-related films, speeches by board members at special assemblies, visits with Holocaust survivors who have shared their experiences with teachers and students, and providing assistance to teachers on curriculums. The center also organized exhibitions, lectures, and seminars for the general public. This year, we deeply appreciate to have Mr. Gelber and his wife all the way from Holland coming to Hong Kong to share his personal extraordinary stories during the Holocaust at the evening's event and also at over 12 schools the week before. Of the about 4,000 Jews deported from Holland to Bergen-Belsen, half did not return. Most of them died, and some had been exchanged. Since his retirement, Mr. Gelber has been very active as guest speaker for West Epoch at a great number of schools at all levels, and also in Germany at official events and numerous occasions in order to continue planting the seeds of peace and mutual respect. History must be passed on to our future generations, together with its lessons. May the United Nations Holocaust Memorial Day be not only an act of remembrance, but remembrance to act together for a better future through continued education to advance tolerance and understanding among people in building a peaceful and inclusive world. Thank you.
first to march in was the German Wehrmacht, with big dogs looking for Russian soldiers. When we saw the Germans, we knew. That's it. We made our way back to our flat. Right away, the Nuremberg laws were enacted in full. It meant that you couldn't
go out in certain hours, or shopping in certain shops, and you were not allowed to walk on the pavement. Also, you had to put yellow stars of a certain size on the front, left side and back,
so they could see from both sides that you were Jewish.
You couldn't not put it on, because the population cooperated with the Germans. You could pretend that you were somebody else because everybody knew you, and you would be denounced. They used to grab
people in the street and from their houses to do all sorts of undignified work. They also burnt books from Jewish libraries and Hebrew schools on the spot.
One Sabbath day, there were 2 big knocks on the door, and 2 big Lithuanian partisans came.
They had my father's name on the list.
Just left without saying goodbye or anything.
That was the last time I saw my father.
October 9th, 1942. Today I have nothing but dismal and depressing news to report. Our many Jewish friends and acquaintances are being taken away in droves. The Gestapo is
treating them very roughly and transporting them in camper cars to Westerbork, the big camp in Drenthe to which they're sending all the Jews. Micha told us about someone who managed to escape from there. It must be terrible in Westerbork. The people get almost nothing to eat, much less to drink, as water is available only 1 hour a day. And there's only one toilet and sink for several thousand people. Men and women sleep in
the same room, and women and children often have their heads shaved.
Escape is almost impossible.
Many people look Jewish, and they're branded by their shorn heads. If it's that bad in Holland, what must it be like
in those far away and uncivilized places where the Germans are sending them? We assume that most of them are being murdered. The English radio says they're being gassed. Perhaps that's
the quickest way to die. I feel terrible. Fine specimens of humanity, those Germans, and to think, I'm actually one of them. No, that's not true. Hitler took away our nationality long ago.
The situation in the Warsaw Ghetto was truly horrendous. Food, water, and sanitary conditions were non-existent. You couldn't wash. People were hungry and very susceptible to disease because of their weakened condition. It's amazing what happens to people when
they're deprived of their basic needs. For my brother and me, there was no school. The only entertainment was taking a walk. It was unbelievable the number of dead people we saw in the streets. When we came home after a walk, it was mandatory
that we took off our clothing to search for life, because they were the ones carrying typhus and typhoid fever. The only way
you could survive was by supplementing your diet with things bought through the black market. But you can imagine that
if the sellers were risking their lives to obtain these things,
then the price is going to be extremely high.
So it was no secret in the family that eventually our financial resources would run out, and we
would face the same situation as others.
Before we got to the wagon, they gave us bread. In the middle of the wagon, there was a barrel with water. We were like sardines. In one corner, a young couple
was sitting with a baby, warming some milk and water with a candle to give the baby something to drink.
The stench in that train.
I cannot tell you.
It's impossible to visualize.
We were like animals.
From Lodz to Auschwitz is not very far, but I suppose we were going about a day and a night, because when we got to Auschwitz, it was still dark. They told us to get off the train
and leave our luggage. That would come afterwards. They were separating men and women. The screams. Can you imagine when a husband is separated from a wife?
or a son separated from a mother.
It was just terrible. I had
Left my mother behind in the ghetto. I was feeling sick and had diarrhea. I was in a terrible state. They were counting us. And when it got a little bit lighter, I realized there were wooden barracks with electric wires around them. Then, from one of the barracks,
a girl came out. She had a very short dress, no hair, no shoes. I thought that it was a mental institution. I didn't realize that in about 2 hours,
I would look exactly the same.
The next part was getting my number tattooed. 2 young slaves, I would describe them that way, came along.
One of them had a book, a typical German book, nothing in it but numbers.
And the other one took a pen and bottle of ink and was this, very quickly and adroitly,
Tattooed us.
In Terezin, nobody asked your name, but the boys and other people knew who I was. But in
Auschwitz, you became a number. You didn't know anybody. The only person I knew was my brother. We stuck together. What struck me about the camp was the smell.
By then, we knew it was an extermination camp. We saw chimneys and the fire was very high.
You go through the chimney.
That was the standard saying. I never heard about the gas chambers, so I didn't know how people were killed. But we
saw the chimneys and associated the flames with transports coming in.
There was a smell of human flesh being burned. A certain smell. It was the air.
You were breathing the dead.
We walked out from Auschwitz in January 45. Half of the people were naked. Well, not exactly, but what did we wear? One dress. Some had no shoes. And we walked in the snow for 21 days. I was wearing a dress. Do you know, I walked, I marched, and I slept while marching. I liked going through the villages when I could see that life was still going on. Really? You didn't know
that people could live a normal life with electricity in rooms.
One day we stopped in a village. They took 2 wagons, put the ill girls in the wagons, and we had to push them into the forest, where they finished them off. It was better for them. Anyway, we came to
Rosne. They couldn't let us in, no more space. But from there we got on trains, open trains, and it was freezing cold.
I remember the Italian girl next to me. She must have done a wee, and she froze to the floor and couldn't get up.
We all had completely white noses, like pieces of ice, completely frozen. On the way, we saw another train
with men. These
Like animals.
Much worse than the women. We didn't talk much, so
as to not lose energy, we drank snow. When the train stopped, we ate frozen beetroot from the fields. Then we came to Ravensburg, where I spent 2 weeks on a bucket because I had dysentery.
Things were really desperate at the time. Food was minimal. Typhus had exploded. People were very frightened. Still, there was this particular feeling of elation that the war was coming to an end, and this utter fear that we were going to be gassed. And on one May
Day, my mother was accosted by some Russian POWs in the camp who knew she was one of the English speakers. They took her up into an attic where, miraculously, they had hidden a radio. They switched it on and she wrote down on a piece of paper,
which is now in the Imperial War Museum, Winston Churchill's broadcast on the BBC announcing that the war would end at midnight that night. So my mother was probably the first person to know in Theresienstadt that the war was going to end in 6 hours' time.
The Germans disappeared during that night, and the Russian army came into the camp. The camp was in complete confusion.
The Russians were in.
People were dying like flies. And very soon,
the camp elders issued a statement about the camp being liberated and the International Red Cross taking it over, appealing for calm. The Red Cross came in and the whole camp was sealed off. There is this feeling of euphoria and relief. The main relief was that we were not going to be gassed. The first thing the Red Cross did
was to try to decontaminate and contain this typhus. I learned that the gas actually used to carry out the delousing operation
was none other than Zyklon B, the very gas that killed my father.
We were in fact the very last place to be liberated on 9th of May, 1945.
When I was 7 years old, I was enjoying a very happy childhood with my parents, sister, and little brother. My father was teaching me how to ride my bicycle. I was eager to go to school, running home to my mother again, who was waiting with tea. When I was 7 years old, I had never experienced a death in my family. When Micha Gelber was 7 years old, he was sent to the infamous transit camp at Westerbork, together with his parents and elder brother. He spent 5 months there before being transported to Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. Towards the end of the war in Europe, they were put on a sealed train eastwards. After 14 days on that train, they were liberated by the advancing Russian army. Micha and his family survived the Holocaust. The majority of Dutch Jews did not. 104,000 perished. That is about 75% of the total pre-war Jewish population in the Netherlands of 140,000. During his time in the camps, Micha has seen and experienced things no child should see or live through. Things that we, who did not go through that, cannot begin to imagine. Last week, I heard Micha stress that despite everything that was done to him and his family, he does not see himself as a victim. He calls himself a survivor. And a survivor he is, most definitely. As a person who survived, he is with us here tonight to share his story in memory of all those who did not.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is not easy to tell in a short period of time what I have experienced in the course of the war. You have already heard a lot tonight, you could have read a few things, but the mere fact that I'm standing here, 81 years old, that means that I am a child survivor, and they are rare. They, in principle, don't exist. Only in case that you were lucky and you were not transported either to Sobibor or to Auschwitz, where it would have been certain that we would have been gassed at arrival, we were transferred from the place called Westerbork, the collecting camp, the concentration camp in the Netherlands, but still in the Netherlands. We still felt a little bit safe in the Netherlands. We were transferred not to Auschwitz or Sobibor, but to Bergen-Belsen. And I, as a child, and I won't speak about the first 3 years of the war, was confronted on the first day of the war, or the fourth day of the war, with the bombardment of Rotterdam. I was only 4.5, sitting in the basement of a school, and I tell you, I was scared as a child, because the planes came over, we could see them through the windows, and they dropped the bombs only 250, 300 meters away from us. And before we were arrested, we were thrown out of our house twice, leaving everything behind, and we were just settled in the third home when we were arrested. 30th of July, 43, Holland was already declared by the Germans as Jew-free, Judenfrei, as if the majority, almost all the Jews, had been arrested. Only those in hiding they could not arrest, or people who had permits to be at home, like my father, who was essential for the industry where he was working. But on the 30th of July 43, knock on the door, front door, rear door, we had to go to Westerbork. All permits were cancelled. And my parents had decided not to go into hiding because the war was coming to an end, we thought. But the most important thing, they did not know what could happen to you after Westerbork, after the train left the concentration camp in the Netherlands. And as a child in one of those barracks, I remember very clearly, Monday night, they would read out the lists of the people who had to board the cattle carts the next morning to go east. And you won't believe it, the cars were marked, at least the one for the German soldiers, and the destination was Auschwitz. But who knew where Auschwitz was? Who knew what happened in Auschwitz? That at the end of the railroad, there was a gas chamber. And my mother and the boys would have gone in straight over there. And such a Monday night, for myself, was terrible. The tension in the barracks, whether your name was going to be mentioned. People got into panic, became hysterical. And the friends I made, in a week or 2 weeks, they would disappear again. And new children would come, and the week after, they would disappear. It was so efficiently, so unbelievably organized, industrialized, that you cannot imagine. And one other experience in Ede, the village where we lived, is that my grandmother and aunt were hidden there. And they were betrayed by the previous address where they were hidden. And it took exactly 10 days from that village in the eastern part of Holland to get to Sobibor and to be killed. It took 10 days. That badly or that horribly it was organized. And it shocked us when we knew that my grandmother and aunt had been caught. It could not have been a coincidence that they were in our village. But we were in Westerbork for 5 months. And that was another reason why my parents did not go into hiding. They were old-time Zionists from well before the war, from the 10s and the 20s, where they met in their organization. And the sister of my mother was already living since 1934 in Jerusalem. So we were entitled to receive a so-called Red Cross exchange certificate. It actually said, it was issued by the British via the Red Cross, that we have the right to enter Palestine in exchange for German nationals, so-called Templiers that were living already for more than 100 years in Holland, but they were fanatical Nazis and wanted to get back to Germany. They had never been there, maybe on vacation, but because they were born in Palestine. And we received such a certificate. I have it here, it's the original. I found it in the papers of my father after he passed away, and I'm keeping that very close to me, because this is my life certificate. If we would not have had this, I would have gone on the next Tuesday on the train to Auschwitz or Sobibor with no chance to survive. But after 5 months, although we were exchange Jews with the promise to stay in Westerbork till we would be exchanged, the Germans decided to send us to a new concentration camp in Germany, between Hanover and Bremen, which was Bergen-Belsen. And nobody knew about that camp. It was new, even the camp commander didn't know. But we went there. Again, my parents made a very important decision. We can try to stay as long as we want, was possible, in Westerbork, till there would come an order, or every family with children out, the chimneys have to smoke, or to go with the Zionist friends. And we went to Bergen-Belsen by train. And it were not cattle carts, but third-rate passenger carts. And I can tell you, when we arrived, there was the SS. We didn't see them in Westerbork, but here were these real, trained, hateful people with their dogs waiting for us to arrive and chasing us, marching us to the compound where inside Bergen-Belsen. I was just 8 years old, and I'm sure that I got a hell of a lot closer to my parents, so scared I was of this shouting by these Nazi soldiers of the SS, those, if you know about it, who had this skeleton, not a skeleton, but skull on their caps, different than all the other units of the German army. And they chased us to the concentration camp, which was about 7 kilometers away, and we marched, or we walked. Then we arrived. We found our luggage, different than in Auschwitz. You had to leave the luggage in the train, and people never saw it back because the people were murdered and the rest was confiscated. But here we actually found our luggage on a big sand plane. We could pick it up like a terminal at the airport, and we were chased into barracks. What did the children do? Everybody is asking, Micha, what have you been doing there in Bergen-Belsen? We stayed there for 15 months. And if people think about camps and they think about names, everybody's associated, obviously, even today, especially with his memorial, is Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen, because there was a bit older child who arrived there via Auschwitz with the death marches. That was Anne Frank. And that is why, well, it sounds strange, Bergen-Belsen became such a horrible but famous location, because that is where the people came from the other concentration camps and died. And I, as a child, has experienced it. I have seen it. How more and more people were coming in. Because in the beginning, we didn't get enough to eat, there was dysentery, there was not, a lot of people had to go to work, but we were still kind of managing. Because what was very important, when we arrived, they did not take away our clothes, they didn't shave us. I don't have a tattoo, because these Nazis were not so stupid to mark us in that way, exchange us against Germans to Palestine with such a marking, like a cow with a little number in its ear. So, and we stayed in family relation. The men had to sleep at night in the men's barracks, the mothers with their children. We were first sleeping in beds 2 tiers high. Later it became 3. 2 people to the bed. So I had 90 centimeters with my brother, who was 2.5 years older. So we managed. But grown-up strangers to each other, we were also staying in such a bed. And in the bed beside us, this I will never forget, there were 2 beautiful girls, twins. And one day, one of the twins was dead. That's what we were confronted with. Death was everywhere around us. And during the day, we had to stand at the parade because they were crazy about counting. God forbid that one Jew will escape from the concentration camp. We were surrounded by barbed wire, with watchtowers, with SS soldiers. If children would get too close to the fence, they would already warn you, get out, otherwise we shoot you. Luckily enough, I do not anyway remember that it ever happened, but it was the danger that threatened us all the time. And we would stand in parade, 1 time a day, 2 times a day, sometimes 3 times a day. They were afraid that maybe one person would have escaped. Those that went out of the compound to work, those that stayed in the barracks, and those that are walking around in the camp and working there. It never fitted. A French woman might have forgotten that her baby was asleep under a blanket, or a person had died in his bed and it was not counted, it was not reported. So we had to be counted again and again, and I remember very well that I once stood for 9 hours barefoot in the snow in the winter of 44, 45. What were the threats? Well, death by illness. Typhoid was the first enemy, and I was one of the very first persons who got typhoid and got into hospital for about 2 weeks, but I had still enough resistance. I survived the typhoid. But if you got spotted typhoid, you could be sure that you would not survive. You could get into the lazaret, like they called it, this little hospital. You had 40, 41 degrees fever. It would go down under 39, and you were thrown out. And then you got in the barracks, a relapse, and you would die. I think 98% of people who got fleck typhus or spotted typhoid, they were sure to die. While we started with an empty concentration camp, there had already been 30,000 Russian prisoners of war, but they had all died in a period of 3 months in trenches eating grass. They transferred it to the SS for us. But there was space for 10, maybe 12,000 people. But when the evacuation started in the labor camps, in Auschwitz, in all kinds of other locations, they came to us. And very soon we were about 60, 70,000 people, and our camp commander was sacked. They wanted another one. He happened to be the camp commander of Auschwitz-Birkenau, one of the worst animals in the whole story of the Holocaust. He was hanged after the war. And while these people were coming in, more people were dying, the compounds were getting smaller, the beds were getting higher, the food was less, the illnesses were mounting, dysentery was, everybody had it. And you had to try to survive. In the end, we would get 200 calories per day. Just imagine that a normal day food is about 2,000 calories if we are feeding ourselves today. So it was a horrible situation. And in the winter of 44, 45, those are the memories I have, when the piles were getting higher and higher and more bodies were added. They were frozen. Sometimes they would come by with a horse cart driven by a horse, and they would throw up a few bodies, but they couldn't solve the problem anymore. Bodies were everywhere. Luckily enough, it was on the other side of the barbed wire. It was bad enough the people that were dying in our compound, but it was still handled a little bit decently. If somebody was still there and alive, and of the family to help him. I have seen in the end also cannibalism. A man fell over, he died, another jumped on him, took out his liver and had a nice dinner. But he was caught and he got spanked 50 times. I don't know if he survived or not, he walked away, but maybe he collapsed at the other side of the barbed wire, but that's the things we were seeing. And the story I don't very often tell is, I actually saw the prisoner in his pajamas crawling to the kitchen, stealing one sugar beet, running back under the cover, and all the time I was watching, but one of these women that came from Auschwitz that were guards saw it happen also. She stopped him. He had to open his coat. It fell to the ground. He had stolen, so she shot him. Those are pictures that you will never forget. But strangely enough, it doesn't harm me. I can easily talk about it, as you notice. But my granddaughter once said, and so say so many other people, you have no emotions. No, I kind of lost my emotions. I have become a fatalist. When you ask me how much do you believe in human life, is the life of a person worth anything? Well, basically I think it's not worth anything, because I've seen what it was worth. We were dying because we were subhumans, so-called Untermenschen. That was the intention of the Germans. And they just kept a few not going to the gas chambers. And we are talking about 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust. This whole group of exchange Jews, all kinds of. You have no idea what people had for passports. They didn't even know of which country, but they had the passport of a middle American country, of Argentina, of Turkey, of Spain, of Sweden. And they were not killed outright. And we had our certificate, which was kind of a safeguard that they would not kill us outright. But there was no guarantee that you would survive these horrors. We survived. We were put on a train, as you heard. When the camp was overloaded, overfilled, we were put on a train where everybody was brought to the west. We had to go east. Most likely to Theresienstadt in Czechoslovakia at that time. And that was another location where they kept some Jews for human trading. Also some Dutch Jews. A friend of mine survived Theresienstadt. If you see Jewish children that survived, they were either children from Bergen-Belsen, or children from Theresienstadt, or from the experimental blocks, mostly twins. That's a chapter in itself, but for that reason, Germans also kept children. And we arrived after 13 days and nights in a village. We couldn't go any further. I've still been on the 18th of April, and that's a very funny memory. On the 18th of April, in the middle of Berlin, and we were standing at some railroad station, and very close by was a train station. And out of this remise, or this garage of trams, came a tram. And he was just traveling while the whole city was destroyed. But a little boy who is looking out of the window, he notices such things. But the most horrible thing is when your friends and girlfriends were dying, or their parents. And there are only 6 families out of 1,250 people with such certificates that came out complete. And actually, 222 people have been exchanged to Palestine. Exchanged against these fanatical Nazis who wanted to get back to Germany. One also asked this week, I've been at many schools, I've seen about 12 schools and universities in the, let's say, greater Hong Kong area. And some of the children thought, what is your outlook on life? What did you experience and what are your conclusions? Some children asked some very difficult questions, some that I didn't even answer for myself. But I said, look, as much as we hoped that at the end of the war, this would never happen again. I mean, it was mentioned in the Declaration of the United Nations. Look around you what is happening today. What happened between 1945 and today? And what are we doing about it? Should I still believe in humanity? Should I still believe that people are trying to save other people? That is not so. But I would like to summarize, it was already said. I don't see myself as a victim. I'm a rare, extinct species, but I'm not a victim. I'm a survivor. Thank you.
evening. This year, at our traditional candle lighting ceremony, we'll honor the Dutch victims of the Holocaust by reading their letters from deportation camps or thrown from trains, taking them to concentration and death camps. There are many such surviving letters by these victims. They all illustrate the varying emotions of naivete, doom, resignation, and hope. The vast majority of Dutch Jews were killed in Auschwitz, Sobibor, and Mauthausen. We will also, in the final candle, honor Elie Wiesel, who passed away this last year. We remember. And we, Israelis, also remain ready and strong, not to be at the mercy of others, never again.
Before reading out this letter, it should maybe be explained what the Barneveld list was. Barneveld, of course, is a town in the Netherlands. The Barneveld list contained the names of some 700 mostly prominent Jewish Dutch citizens who were exempt from being sent to concentration or death camps. So here's the letter written by Joachim Hans, called Jochen Sanders, born 1919, and he was killed in 1944, in the punishment barracks in Westerbork, where he was informed of his deportation the following day. He was deported to Auschwitz. September 20th, 1943. Dear Yanni, I was just informed that I'm to leave tomorrow. In spite of the fact that I'm on the Barneveld list, they are not letting me travel there because of my S, which stands for the German word Sperre, barring people. Yesterday, actually, I thought I would receive an exemption from transport, but I have not. I hoped I'd see you several times more, but I won't. I'm sending you a pen I still have. Do with it as you like. If you don't want it, give it to someone else. Would you like to write Do, a friend, or others in Barneveld? I don't know what I need to say. They'll probably be able to imagine for themselves. Farewell, and may the Lord grant that they'll be able to stay there until the war's end.
Postcard written by the Dutch Knox sisters, Hein and Wim, in Amsterdam, to Mr. Van Zie, a resident of the same city. It was dropped from the deportation train. Tuesday. Dear boys, we were very happy with your package. It was wonderful. The cake, in particular, was very delicious. We are sitting in the train, 40 of us, in a freight wagon. Mama and Papa are also with us. Nanny, the S wagon. We received your package last night. Thank you so much for the wonderful care you bestow upon us. Hopefully, we will see each other very soon. Call Delame. Give regards to him and to all our friends. We think of you a lot. We are probably going to Riga. That's where mother is also. Some are in Westerbork. It could be difficult there. Within 3 days, we are already filthy. The spirit is great. We didn't shed a tear. We are just completely numb. Regards to Roel, Lex, Leo, Joke, and for you, a hearty kiss. Hey.
Postcard from Eddie Hillison's book, thrown out of the train 7 September, found by farmers outside Gelber camp and posted by them on 15 September 1943. Christine, opening the Bible at random, I find this: "The Lord is my high tower. I am sitting on my rucksack in the middle of a full freight car. Father, Mother, and Micha are a few cars away. In the end, the departure came without warning, and sudden special orders from The Hague. We left the camp singing, Father and Mother firmly and calmly, Micha too. We shall be traveling for 3 days. Thank you for all your kindness and care. Friends left behind will still be riding to Amsterdam. Perhaps you will hear something from them, or from my last letter from camp. Goodbye for now from the 4 of us. Etty." This is a farewell letter from the leadership of the synagogue in Haarlem. It was written in the Hollandse Schouwburg, the Jewish theater in Amsterdam, where the Jews of the capital were collected before going to Auschwitz. To all the members and ex-members of the Synagogue Restored North Holland. At this very grave moment in my life, I would like to address you and instill in you faith for the future. I do this because I know that I do this on behalf of my husband, who with so much love and Jewish dedication has set to his task.
The sixth candle is dedicated to the eternal memory of Eli Wiesel, who passed away on July 2nd, 2016 at age 87. Eli was the survivor of Auschwitz and Buchenwald and a world-renowned writer and speaker on the lessons of the Holocaust. He won the Nobel Prize in 1986 for speaking out against violence, repression, and racism. The Norwegian Nobel Committee described Wiesel as one of the most important spiritual leaders and guides in an age when violence, repression, and racism continue to characterize the world. Eli explained his feelings during his acceptance speech with the following words: "Silence encourages the tormentor, but never the tormented. Sometimes we must interfere. When human lives are endangered, when human dignity is in jeopardy, national borders and sensitivities become irrelevant." Senator from Utah, Orrin Hatch, paid tribute to Wiesel in the Senate after his death, saying, "With Eli passing, we have lost a beacon of humanity and hope. We have lost a hero of human rights and a luminary of Holocaust literature."
If I could ask everyone to be upstanding for a moment of silence, which will be followed by Kaddish.
גדל והתקדש פר רבה, ועלמא דיברה כרותה, ימליך מלכותה, ויצמח בוקנה, ויקרב נשפה. היכולנו ביום אחד וחייה לכל בית ישראל, ועגלה בזמן קריב, הוא אמן. יהא שמי רבה מבורך, לעלם על מי המיה יתברך, וישתבח ויתפאר, ויתרומם, ויתנשא, ויתהדר, ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמד קודשה בריחו. לילה מכל ברכתה, שירתה תשפחתה המתה, אמירן בעל מה יבוא אמן. יהא שלמה רבה משמיה, חיים ושבע, וישועה ונחמה, ושזפה וגאולה וסליחה וכפרה, ורווח והצלה לנו ולכל עמו ישראל, ונאמר אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו וברחמיו, יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל, נאמר אמן. כלסיצה.
Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank our guests and many participants for joining this ceremony. Our mission at HKHTC and our mandate is all about educating people to understand the dangers of hatred, bigotry, and intolerance. Micha Gelber has spent most of this last week here with us, visiting schools and meeting literally thousands of youngsters and sharing his story. We urge you to consider supporting us in this important mission. On your chairs you'll find our annual newsletter and more information about our organisation. We wish you well, we thank you very much indeed for coming, and wish you a safe journey home. Thank you very much.